under the launch?
I did that, and that's when it kept telling me it was trying to download everything. But we will just do this part here. And I'll do it here as well. Okay, well, I don't have WebEx. The room has it, but I don't have credentials for it, so,
But you've already sent it out.
right.
No, okay, good. I was like, I should try to. No, I was thinking I had to, my daughter's. Oh, right, dude. Yeah, that's good.
I didn't want her to without.
Yeah, it's good.
So she gets a little, has to fix it.
Oh, yeah.
Just.
That's really good.
No,
Yeah.
this is not closest.
Yeah, so I'm glad we had a little time before. Building some buffer. Hey, good morning. Where's your coffee of choice?
McDonald's, I made coffee for $1, so I was like, well, that's better than paying $7 somewhere else.
That's true, that's true.
That's good.
There's a little place that I found though, right there down the road, a little German place, I mean, yeah, it's probably a little more like, but the environment's cool, and you probably could just hang out and talk, and now you have 15, and the guy's so laid back.
Yeah, I went to one like that last week, it's called Equinox or something like that.
Oh.
It's just right there, it's right on the corner.
Uh-huh.
And it's the same idea, it's just like, I felt like I should have just hung out there, not even got it. It's like, you guys aren't dragging any of this, like, it's open house.
I was like, but I was inside with you, he was like, I would,
It's a small town, it's fine.
yeah, good morning. Yeah, no, that definitely is like the independent coffee owners that feel very chill.
How was drop off this morning?
It's fine. Got there early. Waited around for a bit. Early. All the trees this morning.
Today, after I washed off the banner,
Okay, well, it is 9:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. It's good to see you this morning. We have some folks that are joining us in person and some that will be joining us on Zoom. I'm not sure how well that is going to work. So, and I want to tell everyone that the children are the first priority. So if one of my teachers contacts me and says there's been an accident in a classroom or anything, we will pause this and I will go there. Because your children are that important. We love your kids. We're glad that you are, I don't like this. This is like, I feel like I'm in a pulpit or something. I'm like, I might need to calm down, but then I couldn't run the computer. I feel like I'm looking, like that's crazy. Okay. But we are glad you're here. The center really has done a lot since COVID to try to bring the programs back up to full speed, and we're getting there. So thank you for participating. Thank you for driving however far it is that you drive every day to get here. We know for a lot of you, it's quite a distance. So thank you for getting up early in the morning and getting them ready on a Saturday of all things. So let's see, I'm gonna have to do this in both places. Okay, so this is Dr. Carnes. She is our founder and the woman for whom the center is named. She began the center in 1979, and it was initially named just the Center for Gifted Studies. But after 20 years and all of the work she did in the research, the federal grants, the number of children that were coming at that time, the university made the decision to rename the center in her honor. So it is now the, which is part of the name, the Francis A. Carnes Center for Gifted Studies. Our mission is to strengthen gifted education in Mississippi, nationwide and globally, upholding these performance standards. And this is what we try to do with everything that we do. Programming for children and youth, and the Saturday program is part of that. Online programming that ensures the continuation of trained educators in the world of gifted ed. There have been several changes in higher ed and especially MDE and higher ed not always being on the same exact page, and that has made it very difficult for colleges to meet the minimum enrollment requirements for a niche area like gifted education or even SPED or deaf education or other things of that nature. So MDE has allowed teachers to only take the praxis to be licensed in gifted education right now, which that's kind of a scary thing. I know some amazing teachers who have gone that route, but they have pursued education toward gifted in another way. I know others who have taken it and they've had no training in gifted education whatsoever. That is not a requirement yet in our state, and that is something that we would love for parents to help us advocate for with our legislature, is to require teachers to have, they're all required to have a class in special education, but that class is not required to cover gifted, and gifted education is not a requirement at all. So we are offering now online CEU-based courses. They are not degree-based. They are for continuing education for teachers, so that they can have that training before or after they take the praxis exam. And that way they have the knowledge that they will need to be able to take care of your children appropriately in the classroom. Many of them still have gone through, that are still teaching, have gone through the degree program, but we're starting to see that transition where more of them are not getting that degree in gifted education. So those online courses are our way of trying to meet that need, even with the limitations that have been put on class sizes and other things. We're trying to work around and through as best we can, because that is our goal. And then ongoing research and best practices for gifted education. One of the ways we're doing that is with those teachers who are participating in our educator development program. We are planning. We don't have any actively working right now, but action research in the classrooms of those teachers who are going through that program with us. So that is one thing that we have planned. And then also outreach to parents that builds good support systems. That is what you are here for. That is what the parenting workshops are all about. We used to hold a parenting conference in September each year, and it was a day-long event for parents. And what we found was we had to battle the football schedule and we had to battle a lot of parking issues on campus and things like that. And we saw that parents were hanging around and on campus while their children were here at the Saturday program. And we said, well, that seems like a really good fit. So we give parents something to do while their children are in class. And that way we're still getting the same information, but it may be at a better time for our parents where they can actually be here. So that is where this program has developed, where it came from. We would love to hear from you other ways that you would want to be participants with us, whether it's through an advocacy group, we do have a Facebook group, but I don't get in there and manipulate and it's there for people to participate with if they want to, but it's not something, we don't strictly run it, but it's there. So we do want to continue growing and becoming one of the Southeast's most prominent areas for gifted education. One of the things you may not know about Mississippi is that we are one of only 4 states in the entire nation that has a mandate to serve gifted education, that mandates not only testing, but service to students. Some states have a mandate to identify the student, but not a mandate to serve the student. How crazy. But that's the way it exists. Gifted education is not part of IDEIA or the special education law. Some states have brought it, with their legislation, have brought it into that in their state, like Pennsylvania has done that. Mississippi has not. But what we do have is the Gifted Child Act that was passed in 1986. So that is our way of meeting the needs of gifted students. So we identify, we serve, and we fund. And we're one of only 4 states that does all 3 things. So that puts us at the top in the nation for gifted education. We may be somewhere below in other things. We're moving up. If you haven't heard, our reading scores have brought us way, way up in the last couple of years. So, but for gifted education, we have been at the top for many, many years, a lot in part to Dr. Carnes and her work with the legislature back in the 70s and 80s, trying to get that passed. Her advocacy there is what has allowed, if it weren't for her, we would not have that mandate. So we're very lucky to have her legacy. She still calls occasionally and checks in and asks how many children are in the programs, how we're doing. So I just want to give you a little bit of information regarding the programs for children that we offer. Of course, you know about the Saturday Gifted Studies program. Many of you do because your children are attending now. If your children are not attending the program, the Saturday program starts at preschool and goes through the 8th grade. It used to go through high school, but we had very low enrollment in our 9th through 12th grade area that didn't support hiring a teacher. So I've always told our kids when they get to the 8th grade, if you want to come back next year, make sure you have at least 4 friends to come with you, because that's what it takes, is 5 students in a class. So we will definitely open high school classes if we have those children that want to come. We just don't have them right now. And again, we're building back after COVID, so that's part of that process. In the Saturday program, the students don't necessarily have a choice of the class that they take, but they do get 2 classes. One is academically focused, and the other is arts focused. So that from 8:30 to 10, they get 1 class, and from 10:30 to 12, they get the other class, and they have a break for snack in the middle. The Young Gifted Students program runs the 2nd full week in June. It is very similar to the Saturday program in that the classes are determined by us completely. It's like if you are in this grade, you take this class. And a lot of people ask, why do you do it by grade if they're advanced? Well, because everyone here is advanced. So that helps us take care of things like asynchronous development, which we'll talk about in a little bit. If you're not aware of what that means, it's when you have a very small child whose brain is very advanced, but whose body is on track chronologically, or maybe even delayed chronologically. So you have these, where an average child kind of develops on a level, more or less level playing field, intellectually, physically, emotionally. Your gifted student is more likely to have different plateaus and peaks and valleys in their development. So that is something that gifted children work through. The Summer in the Middle program runs concurrently with the Young Gifted Students program, but it is for our middle school students who, although they are the right age to start our residential programs, may not feel ready to spend the night in a dorm. So that program, we offer 2 or 3 different classes, and the students get to choose which class they want to attend. And so the grades are more mixed together starting in summer in the middle. Summer Gifted Studies program will run the third full week in June. And it is all day, every day, for a week. And they stay in the dorm. They have class in the morning. We go to lunch together. We go to breakfast together. They go to class. We go to lunch together. They go back to class. Their counselors pick them up from the teachers. They do recreational activities in the afternoon. They go to dinner together. They go back to the dorm and they do some collaborative activities, some fun things to get them engaging and making friends with their peers. And they always have a homework hour. So their classes are not just during the day. They have homework that they do at night during our residential programs. So that's a quiet hour. And then we have lights out sometime between 10 and 11, depending on what night it is and the age of the students in the program. Our leadership program is the final week in June every year. It might run into a couple of the first days in July, but we try to avoid the 4th of July because campus is closed and the cafeteria only serves noodles. So we don't want to do that. But leadership program is 6th grade through 12th grade, or the summer between junior and senior year. They do not have to currently be in a leadership role anywhere, but they have to want to be or be interested in, could I be a leader? And so that's what we train them at. They come back 3 different years. The other programs, they can come back as long as they're within the age range. Leadership program is a 3-year curriculum. The first year, they come and they learn the basics of leadership, how to give a speech, how to greet people, how to identify leadership qualities in themselves and others. They learn what it means to lead in that first year. The second year, they work on group dynamics. They work on situational leadership, situational management, if you're familiar with that, how to know if you have a team that's very, very advanced in their work and very experienced, you don't need to micromanage. Whereas if you have a brand new team that has no experience, you need to step in a little more. And so we train them on how to know those types of things and be aware of different personality dynamics in their group and that sort of thing. The final year of the leadership program, it is more about the legal side, how to start a nonprofit or how to work in a business, or a for-profit business, but something that is based on helping the community. All 3 years, they are able to develop a platform for leadership in which they look around, they decide what they are interested in, how they want to change their community, their school, their faith-based organization, something about the world that they live in. And they create a plan to take home with them and make change happen. So they can stick with that same plan all 3 years, or they can change their plan every year. It's up to them. In the past several years, we have had one young lady who came in to Leadership 1 the week after her best friend's father died of pancreatic cancer. So of course, her platform was cancer awareness. And by the end of the week, before she ever left here, she had a website up and running. She had connected with the Pancreatic Cancer Foundation and got permission from them to put a link in her site for donations to go to them. And when she came back for year 2, she had already raised $5,000 in her community with the help of her, I don't remember if it was Student Council or Beta Club, one or the other. And with that sponsor and things that they did in her school throughout the year, she really did carry out her plan. So we're really proud of her and that work. Another young man that came around that same time, that same year, his grandfather was a pastor, and the church was getting older, diminishing attendance, no young people. So his platform was, I want to start a youth group at my grandfather's church. And he did, and it was successful. And so he got the youth group started back at his church. So we've had lots of children do lots of different things. Oh, there was another group of children that decided to work together recently. Some of them were already volunteering at a local animal shelter in their neighborhood. Another loved animals, didn't have a shelter in their neighborhood, and just was trying to take care of all the strays in their neighborhood. And so they all got together and got the shelter that the one was already working at to work with the community leaders of the other place, send a van, collect animals, take them back, like, so they worked on that project together. So some of them carry out their plans as those did. Other students take the plan home and it goes on a shelf and they come back the next year and they go, well, I didn't do much. So we really ask parents to be involved in that plan as well and get them connected back with us if they need mentorship or if they're stuck, so that we can help advise them or we can get them the connection with a mayor or a city councilman or whoever that they, need help getting in contact with. Sometimes that person just needs an introduction from an adult, because when a child calls, they're like, who is this kid, right? So we help make those introductions if we can, if we have those connections, or we try to find someone who does, or a parent who can step in, or a teacher in the neighborhood who might know someone. We'll try to make those connections the best that we can. So that's what that is for. The SPADY, Summer Program for Academically and Artistically Talented Youth, we have not held in the last couple of years. We are changing that program up a little bit. It used to be the one that ran, we collaborated with Duke Talent Identification Program on that. Duke has closed their doors forever, Duke TIP, not the whole university, just the TIP program. And so that left us without their network of mail outs and connection and all of that. So we've started the Mississippi Talent Development Initiative, which basically just means we do a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls to schools and to mayor's offices and things like that, asking them to recommend students for our program. The reason we're changing it a little bit is because that program was around for so long, it was a forerunner of dual enrollment. Now all of our high schools have dual enrollment, and so we don't need the same kind of program anymore, which means that was a successful program. It spurred people to do something different in their schools. So instead of having to come for 3 weeks in the summer to get a high school credit, they're doing it right there in their school, getting credit not just for high school, but high school and college. So because of programs like this one, it told people there were enough students interested in that, and now it's being provided in a different way. So we're trying to find that next place that high school students really need us. And that's something that you can help us with. You can let us know what your children need, what their interests are, and what you would like us to provide that other places are not providing. So that's one of the things with working in a nonprofit or a center, is you have the lifespan and the life cycle of different parts of what you do. And so Spady is kind of in a low point right now, but there's still opportunity and option to change it and make it new and something different. So as we get feedback, we're working with professors on campus to gain their input on how they would like to help with that. We're talking to parents, and you can participate in that. So as we do that research, we will let you know how that's changing and what we're coming up with next. But that will, if we have enough students interested, if it runs the same weeks as Summer Gifted and Leadership. They run concurrently, but it's 2 weeks. Okay, so let me change it in both places. Okay, services for teachers. That's something else that we do. We have a day of sharing for teachers in the fall, where teachers get to come and workshop different things. We bring in speakers from all over, from the Economic Council, from the Museum of Natural Science, from wherever. We find people that have Robotics Academy, all kinds of things. We have those trainers come in and work with our teachers and actually workshop their lesson plans and how they can incorporate those things. We also have a gifted strand at the Making Connections Conference, which is the largest teacher conference in the state. It's on the coast, and that is the first week in June. That's why all of our programs start the second week of June. So we have 5 or 6 different presenters that will go and be a gifted cohort within the overall conference. So gifted teachers and general education teachers can come into those classes and learn how to work with gifted students in the general classroom. which we find is a very big hole. We need that. And then again, I mentioned the educator development program to you before, and the ambassadors are those who have been through 3 cycles of the EDP program and have interviewed with us to become an ambassador in their school system, to make sure the word gets out about our programs, and to help train other teachers in best practices, whether they are a teacher of the gifted, or whether they are a general education classroom teacher who wants to work better with their gifted students. So that's kind of where we are and what we do. And of course, Parenting Gifted workshop today, and our goal is to develop that advocacy group. I forgot to click in both places. We want to create an advocacy group with all of you guys. So we need your feedback on how to make that happen effectively. Okay, so why are you here today? These are the things that this series is going to work through. We are really focusing on kind of your superpowers as a parent. Last year we talked about your value as a parent, what makes you a valuable parent to your student, and how they need you. And so we're continuing kind of in that same vein, but a little bit more related to skills that you can build within yourself instead of just an overall, how does the dynamic work? Okay, so this week we're going to talk about reflect. What does it mean to reflect as a parent, and how that can benefit you and your child? Next week we'll talk more about communication, and then in week 3 we'll talk about navigation and goal setting. But in all of these, we want to talk about advocacy and how you can advocate for your child. Okay, before we get too much into all of that, excuse me, many of you are very well aware of the characteristics of gifted children. I don't know if that's showing up very well, but these are just some things you may see in your child. They learn easily and rapidly. They have a wide range of interests, or an extreme focus in one area. They are self-taught, specifically in reading and writing, often as a preschooler, but maybe not. Okay, these are things we see in a lot of gifted students, but not all gifted students. Okay, they are very independent in thought and action. That independence kicking anybody these days? Okay. Right? Okay. They use previously learned information in new situations. So something that they overheard 3 weeks ago, you didn't think they were even paying attention, and next week they're doing something with it. You hear them playing with that idea, or they say something in a conversation and you're like, I didn't even know you heard that. But they're applying it appropriately in that new situation. They have deep and intense feelings and reactions. Their feelings are huge compared to their little bodies, and they don't know what to do with them all the time. They don't have the self-regulation yet to manage those big feelings.
That's the part. That's the part.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
Right. I'm not crying, you're crying. That's good. Okay.
Very opinionated.
Yes, opinionated, all of the things. They may or may not have a longer attention span and intense concentration. Now, right? We know that there are gifted students who are twice exceptional that may also have ADHD. But I want to caution you. The first time I was learning about gifted students, in one of the first classes I ever had in gifted education, we still had overhead projectors up here, okay? And our professor had the overhead going and put a list of characteristics here and a list of characteristics here, but the title was off the end, and we were like, Mr. Conrad, he said, I did that on purpose. I want you to compare these two. The list was almost identical. And when he slid it down and we could see the title, one said ADHD and one said gifted. Okay, The difference comes in the why. The difference comes in the why. Why is my child behaving in this way versus why another child would behave in this way? Okay. There are, if you look at the work of Dr. Daniel Amen, like Amen, he is one of the only psychologists in the world who, he started out as an x-ray technician in the Army, okay? And when he changed into psychology because he really wanted to help people, he said, why are we the only medical profession that doesn't look at the organ we're trying to fix? Everything's a checklist, everything's a behavioral thing. What he's found, he does fMRI scans and other SPECT scans of people's brains to identify where things are coming from. So he has identified 9 different types of ADHD. The medication that most children are given really only works with one of those types. Okay, so not only do we have this mismatch of the medications available and what's actually happening in the brain, a lot of the things, not just for ADHD, but for OCD and ODD and all of the alphabet soup that we call our children, right? A lot of those are behavioral checklists. And if I have that same characteristic list and I can check that off, but I haven't looked in here, how do I know what's really there, what's really going on? So I just want to caution you as parents, don't jump to medication as the very first thing, okay? Try some other stuff first. Now, in all of the hundreds of gifted children that I have known over the years, I have known about 3 that I really saw benefit from medication. 3. I'm not saying the others didn't, but I could clearly see a real difference in their ability to perform better, not just to behave and be complacent and compliant, okay? For a lot of our children, that is the thing that it does. It makes them very compliant. But where did their creativity go? Where did their independence go? Where did who they are go? So I'm not saying don't, I'm just saying there's a lot of reason not to. Be careful. Make sure that your therapist understands that your child is also gifted before you go that route. Okay? There's a book that's called Misdiagnosed. It's gifted children. I will find the actual title. It has left my brain. I was going to tell you, but it's the start of it is Misdiagnosed, and there's another book out there that's like a novel or something that has a similar title. But this one is all about gifted children that have been diagnosed with all of these things that they really don't have, and the detriment that they go through because of the medication or the behavioral modification at the school or whatever else is going on, just because they didn't really need it in the first place. So be careful with that. Another thing is they ask probing questions. When we have, a lot of times we'll talk to schools and the teachers will ask, well, how do we know the difference between a kid that's just kind of bright and a gifted kid? Okay, your bright child is going to answer every question. They know all the answers. Your gifted kid is the one that's going to ask you the question you've never thought of before, and you go, oh. And you might feel a little dumb in front of your class, but don't take it out on the child because they're just curious. They're not trying to do that intentionally. They have an unusual memory. They might remember things from when they were in the crib, but not remember what they wore yesterday. You know, all that kind of stuff. I know you deal with that, and all of the questions that come with that. Highly developed curiosity. They want to know why, and they don't want to just know the easy answer. Mom, how is the air coming out of the car? How does the car cool off? Well, there's an air conditioner in there. It just, blows cold air. No. What's in there? What's the mechanism that makes, can we take the car apart to see what's behind the dashboard that's making the cold air come out? I've had that conversation with one of my children who is now a pilot. So
there's hope.
There is hope. There is hope. Advanced written and verbal skills, again, this may or may not be the case. All of these are, a lot of our gifted kids have them, but then some of them don't. If they like writing, even if they don't have good handwriting, if they enjoy the creative process, whether they're good at it particularly or not, okay? That's something to look for. Usually in our very young children, we're looking for vocabulary skills. If they can use ly at the end of a word appropriately when they are like 2, 2.5, 3, something's going on up there that they've picked up on a detail that most children don't. Developmentally, most children struggle with adjectives and adverbs and how to use them in the right place in a sentence, the syntax of things, until they're a little older. So when we see one of them that's getting it right and better than we do most of the time when they're that young, something's going on up there. And a keen sense or an unusual sense of humor. So a lot of our gifted children find things funny that we don't. We don't understand. Why do you think that's, or it's our same sense of humor and we're like, finally, somebody gets me, right? So one or the other, those things are going on. However, giftedness is not always the gift that you would expect. Your gifted children are going to go through some of these things, or may go. They don't have to, but they might. Imposter syndrome is really big for our gifted students, especially as they hit middle school and high school. Well, I was just lucky. I guessed a lot. I wasn't really, I'm not really that great. Especially as they finally hit a class that is challenging, or they have a teacher that expects more of them, they begin to doubt their giftedness. I have college students that see our sign or find out that we're here, and they'll come and talk to me like, I used to be gifted. Like, honey, you still are. It doesn't go away. It's not something that the school identifies and stops at school. It's a lifelong, continuous thing. So a lot of our college students have to come to grips with college may be difficult and more difficult than high school was. That doesn't mean those characteristics that made you good at things have gone away. It means you finally hit an appropriate level of challenge. Okay, and that's what we try to do with these programs. I tell my teachers, frustrated but not crying. That's what we want to get to, because that's where we grow. Overexcitabilities. This is another psychological theory presented by Dabrowski. And there are 6 or 7 of the overexcitabilities. It's not just psychomotor, which is hyperactive behavior. There's intellectual overexcitability, which is a constant need for information. If you remember, some of you are old enough, maybe not all of you, I may be the only one in the room that's old enough to remember the movie Short Circuit. Where the little 5 is alive, and he kept driving around going, input, need input. If your child is 5 alive, that's what's going on there. Sensory overexcitabilities are much more common in gifted students. If that tag in their shirt is driving them crazy, that's a sensory overexcitability. So where they are in a classroom can be a huge have a huge impact on their performance. If they're under sitting in a draft with air blowing on them, and that they're receiving too much information through their skin, they're shutting out everything else because that's such a distraction. Now, not every one of them, they all have different sensory things that drive them crazy. But if that's theirs, they don't need to sit in a draft. If it's something about light, maybe they don't need to sit by the window. Things like that. Okay. Squirrel, yes. Yes, absolutely. Underachievement is something that our gifted students struggle with. When school is not meeting my need, and everything I am asked to do, I learned 3 years ago or more, why should I participate? Why should I be respectful to somebody who thinks I'm less than I am already when I walked in the door? Not the right attitude to have, certainly, but it's a valid point. And so they struggle sometimes when they get to that grade level where I've just been overlooked. I've been ignored. I've been patted on the head and told I'm great, but for what? They get to that point where they just don't want to participate anymore. So you might see grades drop. And grades are not a sign of intellect. I'll just tell you right now. Grades are a sign of effort. So I've had brilliant children who have slept through classes, aced a final exam, and couldn't have cared less. Okay. You were one of those? Okay. You know, or they win the science fair, but they fail science, right? That kind of thing. So it's because they're interested, engaged in the project they are creating. It is their work. What's happening in the classroom is the teacher's work.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So there's that mindset, that conflict.
Can we
Gifted.
fix that before we go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the answer for the underachievement problem?
We're still working on
Pointing
that.
out the problem.
Yeah, we're just pointing out the problems right now. Yes.
Figure that one out, we got a Nobel Prize.
Right, exactly, exactly. One of the things that the field really would like to see is for schools to go to a continuous progress curriculum where students are allowed to move at their own pace.
It'd be more self-motivating.
It would definitely be,
conducive to their,
yes, more
output,
self-motivated.
yeah.
And so that equates to, like, you may have heard of mastery education. So once you've mastered this, you move on to something else. However, the way our school system is set up, that
It's
is,
really hard to change things like that because they're so ingrained in the way that schools function.
Yes.
standardized
And,
testing.
you know, people,
Yeah,
the way
standardized
grades are
testing.
understood, it's
Yeah.
just,
It puts a constriction on
Every-
education all the way from the bottom to the top.
absolutely, I agree with that. Both of you, like,
That's another workshop.
that's a whole other workshop. That's one of those advocacy issues we can work on together. Perfectionism, if they are erasing and erasing and erasing until there's holes on their paper because it wasn't right the first time, that's a perfectionism issue. Eating disorders or other types of addictive behavior. Gifted children can, like, they can become obsessed with things. So if they become obsessed with the wrong things or for the wrong reasons, we have things like that pop up. So that's where you come in and you can help guide and help them have the right understanding of self, correct identification of who they are. Again, anxiety issues, loneliness and isolation, often because there aren't other children like them where they are. So that's another reason we do what we do here, is because when your children come here, they are with students who are more likely to think the way they think or understand the way they think. What our children tell us at the end of the programs is, I finally got to tell somebody about this idea. I finally got to work with someone who understood me. Okay, so that's one reason we do what we do, so that they are not as isolated, they are not as alone. They know, at least in the wintertime and in the summertime, I have a friend. I have someone that I can communicate with. And the more parents connect with one another, the more likely those children are able to communicate throughout the year and not just when they're here.
not to like go back to this
Mhm.
underachievement, but
Yeah.
also to like go back to this underachievement idea. I guess because like, I feel for you, right? Like you're trying to probably like
Mhm.
find what's within your locus of control to be able to support. And so like my question is, because probably, like you said, they already knew the content, they kind of understand it, they think that all the extra steps and rules and showing work is just like superfluous for them,
Mhm.
right? And so, because I've definitely seen this in working in education, and so, I don't know, is trying to maybe take some project-based learning at home that sort of like takes what they do at school and be like, hey, tell me what you learned at school, and like, let's see how we can channel this into an area of your interest, and like, you elaborate on it, which gives them maybe some greater like control and focus on it. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of some ways to
That is definitely something
support
that,
on that.
that is definitely something that you can do as a parent at home. Find classes and activities outside of school that they are interested in.
And try to connect them maybe in some way so that there's like that some positive connection that kind of cuts through. I don't
There's
know.
not always a good connection, and there's not always resources in everyone's area for that, but
We do the extracurricular, it's just that specific thing this week.
yeah,
It's like the first week of school, like really getting into
Yeah.
it now. And he's already just checked out and wants to argue with his teacher every day and not do what she wants to do.
mhm,
And I can hear it in his tone,
Yes.
that she's like, copy this stuff on, you know, the cards, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I already know it, so
Why do I need to copy it on the
copy
card?
I'm done with it.
One of the things that
Secondary
we,
school and he's already done.
one of the things that we try to train teachers to do is pre-test. If you pre-tested each unit, you know who's already learned it. There's a thing that teachers can do called most difficult first. I'm going to give everyone in the classroom the opportunity to do the 5 to 10 most difficult problems, math, language, whatever class, and you have an appropriate amount of time, 10, 15, 20 minutes to do these 5 to 10 problems. At the end of that time, the students who have been able to do it without help, they're done with that. That goes in the grade book and they buy time to do something that's a passion project, okay? A lot of teachers don't understand that, but they won't have done this worksheet and what do I put it? You put that grade for every one of those things in the grade book, the same grade. It doesn't matter, like,
Yeah, use some discretion and, you know,
They
as
can
long
do
as
the
you show
hardest,
pass.
they can do the easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I personally went through the underachievement process, like in middle school, I went from straight A's to starting to not doing homework.
Right.
Because I didn't need to.
Right.
Like I said, I'd sleep in class and still
Know everything
the
that you needed to
textbook.
know.
I know the textbook word for word.
Yeah.
So I can identify with it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't any, what's the best way to say it? There was no reason for me to do the work because I wasn't getting
Anything
for
out of
doing
the
it
work.
when I got home.
Right.
Or anything, there was no praise, there was no, it didn't
Yeah.
matter.
Well,
So-
and praise in that situation actually backfires. It works backwards, because if you're praising them for doing something that's less than what they're capable of.
Right, they're just patronizing.
Exactly, and that's the way they feel. They
Right.
feel very much like,
Yeah.
well,
And see,
okay
like,
then.
Yeah.
I wouldn't show my work on math
Mm-hmm.
tests, I wouldn't show my work, and
And you get in trouble for not showing your work.
get in trouble for not showing my work, but I'm smart enough to,
I know the answer,
I
I
know
don't,
the answer, I can come up with it like that, and it's easier for me to just do it in my head than
Yeah.
try and write it out for you to understand on the paper, and you're
Right.
gonna tell me that I did it wrong anyway.
right,
And then
Right.
with the I'm sorry. I
No, you're
didn't know
good,
to
man.
talk to you. With the underachievement also with Dalen,
Mhm.
I tell him, yes, I know that. Well, show me how did you get this answer?
mm-hmm,
How did you get it?
mm-hmm,
Show me your format.
yeah,
But this is the way your teacher needs you to do it for her, because she needs to make sure that you get it this way, so you'll have 2 avenues to go there.
Yeah.
So I use that a lot
mm-hmm,
to make him, well, not make him, but show him that there's several different ways to get to the same answer.
and that's
then when
okay.
he does it his way, well, Gigi, I got it like this, okay, but this is the way she has you to do it. So this is another format, so when you get older, you can
choose.
teach someone 2 different ways.
Mm-hmm,
And he thinks that's like, oh, I know 2 ways.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I started doing that with Connor with his math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's on that same ideal
Mhm.
where I know this is the way that the format's supposed to be, but I come up with the answer differently this way, and it's still the
Yeah.
same answer. I'm like, it's not wrong if the answer is still correct,
right,
but this is the way that they want you to learn it, but it's okay for you to know it this
This
other
way.
way.
Yeah.
Right? So-
Right.
And
right. And so, a lot of teachers want to match the gifted student with the lower student.
you can't do that.
You cannot do that because of that very thing. The way the gifted student is thinking about the problem is so very different. They're just going to confuse that student,
Yep.
or they're going to be so frustrated with that student. And then you've put a gifted student in a position where they are responsible for someone else's learning, and then they internalize that causes anxiety. If that student fails, then I've failed. It's a bad thing all the way
They
around.
all feed into each other.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So there's a lot there. Okay, so things that you might be challenged with as a parent of a gifted student, and you've already talked about a lot of these. Having a consolidated front at home between the 2 parents. That's,
a must.
you have to have that, but a lot of times we do not have that. Another thing that you may be dealing with is being a parent versus being a friend. Let me tell you right now, they do not need you to be their friend. They need you to be their parent. They may be able to balance a checkbook But don't let them do it. They need to see you as the authority in the home. And when you give them responsibility over something like that,
Yeah.
it's the same as giving them responsibility for that other student. If something's going wrong, if you get sick, if you get laid off, then it's, I can't, okay? They need you to be the person to take care of all of those things. So always err on the side of being the parent. The time for being their friend comes when they're an adult.
Yeah, as soon as they have their own house.
Yeah, when they move out, then you can be more of a friend. Okay.
A lot of times I notice that my daughter will like worry about things that really I need to be worrying about, so I have to gently remind her often,
Mm-hmm.
that is a me thing to worry about.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good, like, let me take that one. You don't need to be there. So what you know versus what they think you know, or what they think they know, excuse me. You have experiences that they don't have, and yet they're going to start telling you how you should be doing some things at some point. Because in their mind, they know,
Oh, yes.
but they don't have the experience to back it up. And sometimes we have to have those difficult conversations. Letting them be kids. Yes, they might be able to talk to you about all manner of advanced things, but they still need to play. They still need time away from the mental stress. I had a friend who, 7th and 8th grade, back to back, won the national French competition. When you would ask him, hey, what are you reading? He'd go, W, the encyclopedia. He was in that volume of whatever, you know. Hey, what you reading back there? W or K or whatever. So his mom used to make him go sit outside and not allowed to take a book. You just have to go sit under the tree and just sit there long enough to get bored and be creative, right?
That is actually something that I do.
Yeah.
Because everything I'm like, well, you could do this, or you could, oh, that's boring. Everything's boring. Go outside.
Okay.
Just go outside.
It's good. Okay, this is something that.
Go stare at the trees for a minute.
Go stare at, yeah. Nature is good for you. Being bored is actually good for them.
Being bored?
Being bored, purposefully bored,
Yes.
not bored in a classroom where they should be learning. Having those moments where they have to come up with something to do, where they have to create something, where it's not a game that somebody else has programmed, where it's not a television show that someone else has created, where they have to create. That kind of boredom is good.
I do this to Connor all the time. I'm like, no more screens, find something.
Yeah, yeah.
Find something. I don't care what it is, as long as it's not electronic or on a screen.
Right, absolutely, and that's always good. Ask them questions. Here's a question not to ask. If they've done something wrong, why did you do that? Don't ask them that question. Do you know why you shouldn't ask why?
Because they're gonna lie to you.
Well, but there's a reason why. Why is a defensive,
Yeah.
it's a defensive thing. If you ask me, why did you do that? And I can see on your face you're upset with me, I have to defend everything because I'm losing your value in me. Okay? So for me to still be me and be who you think I am, because you're my parent and I value what you think of me, I have to tell you all these things that I didn't do wrong. So we get that backpedaling, and that's when they start hiding and lying to you.
What's the better version of that?
The better version is,
Because I do ask that unfortunately, and I do
We
see
all
that
do.
exact reaction
We all
of
do.
like
What was your
closing
thought
up.
process while doing this?
yes,
What were you thinking while you did this?
or what was your goal?
Yeah, what were you
What
trying
did
to
you
do?
want?
What were you trying to do?
Yeah, what were you trying to do? Yeah, it's the same question, but it's what were you trying to gain by doing this? And when they tell you this, then I was trying to.
You might see the thought process behind it.
You see the thought process, and you can say, you know what, I understand that. However, I think there might be another way to think about it. Let's talk about this way to think about it. And then you can have the conversation instead of the combat. Okay.
It's so, with Dalen and I, with me being his grandmother, and I'm raising him,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm from the old school, that you do what I say,
Mm-hmm,
and that's it.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
mm-hmm,
I want an answer, and then don't say anything. I grew up military,
mm-hmm,
and my dad say, I say what I say, you say nothing.
mm-hmm. And one thing, you know, that is not incorrect. But what you're gonna have with a gifted student, a gifted child, is
Turmoil.
they will shut down and try to figure it out for themselves, because here's what you need to know. They are not trying to be defiant intentionally. They really want to know something. They really want to know why, or they really want to achieve whatever it was they were doing. And so when you tell them no,
You get aggressive.
they can. So here, and as a teacher in a classroom, you have that issue.
Right.
A lot when you have all the other children in the classroom watching that interaction. So you kind of have to shut it down. But the conversation I would have with gifted students would be, I would ask them, come talk to me, just a moment, come talk to me, away from everybody else. And I would say, okay, I know you really need to know the answer to this, but right now, the whole class is observing you. And I don't want you to be embarrassed or hurt or have any of them make fun of you because of this conversation that we need to have. If you will stop right now, let's continue with class. After class, we can have the whole conversation. I will answer anything that you need to know at that time, but now is not an appropriate time for your own protection, for my protection as the teacher, for other students who don't need to hear you say, they think you're really a nice person, and you're starting to say some ugly things. I don't want to damage your friendships. So this is not the time or place, but we will have the time and we will have the place. Let's set that time and place so you know what it is, when it is. And so they can relate to that, and they can say, oh, I have a time, I'm going to get to ask my question. And then you make sure you do the time. Don't ignore it, because then they won't, the next time it comes around, it'll be worse. So if you set a time with them like that, make sure you have the time. And then another thing is to put aside your own kind of biases about what you think they're supposed to be and do in certain things. Other things, like, there are things that you definitely have to have those boundaries. This is just how things function in our home. This is how things work in life, right? But if it's something like, this is the way to do a math problem, or this is the way to sweep the floor, or this is the way to make your bed, if there's another way that they can do it successfully, why not? Okay, so identity issues, yes, those are good boundaries to keep. But if it's a process issue, let them find another way. Okay.
As long as you get it done.
As long as you get it done. Yep. Okay, so reflection. What does it mean to reflect? Well, we have several definitions of reflection. One is very scientific. It is the throwing back by a body or surface of light, heat, or sound without absorbing it. Without absorbing it. That's the important part. We also have a reflection that is the image that's created by that scientific process. And then we have the meaning of reflection that means to think deeply or seriously consider something.
And absorb.
Mm-hmm. And absorb. Okay, so we're going to talk about reflection as a skill that you can use as a parent for you and for your kids. Okay, so why do you need that skill?
So your kids don't need therapy later?
That is definitely a good answer. Yes. So most important, you want to remember that whether you like it or not, whether you want it to be true or not, a child, particularly a gifted one, is watching everything you do. They're learning from you, and your child reflects you. Sometimes we don't like that, because what we see in our children, we don't want to be that. We hope that that's not a reflection of us. And at some point, the decisions they make are not your decisions anymore. At some point as they're growing, you have to let that go and let them make their own decision. You've done all you can do. You've raised them to the point where they are pretty much grown, and you have to let them make their own mistakes. But when they are young, a lot of what they do can show you what you need to do or what you need to do differently. Okay. So how do you behave? They learn that from you. How to behave, how you behave are two different things, right? So they can learn how to behave by what you tell them. They learn how you behave by watching you. They learn how you influence their behavior. And in turn, they learn how you are influenced by their behaviors, which can be a very good thing or it can be a very manipulative thing. And gifted children are great at manipulation. They find every loophole. They find the way around things. If you have left a door wide open in your, expectations or your rules, they will find a way through it. And that's not to say that they are being negative, hateful, awful people. They're very creative people. And when they want to do something and they see a barrier, they will find the way around that barrier that is acceptable. And that's the way they see it. Because they're technically, they're not wrong. And rationally, remember that asynchronous development we talked about? Rationally, they're not necessarily ready to know the difference. Okay, so that's something to remember. Children become, or we all become, like our teacher. Whoever our teacher is, our goal is to learn everything, whether we know it or not, our goal is to learn everything that person knows and to have the skills that person has, right? That's what a teaching relationship is all about. And as the parent, you are the first and most important teacher. It doesn't matter how many teachers they have in their life, you are the one constant. You are the one that they have forever. Even after parents pass away, the lessons that you taught your children are that's the voice in their head. So if you teach them well, they have a good foundation. Okay. And if you've made mistakes, it's okay. We all make mistakes. We can all learn to do better. And the way we learn that we need to do better is sometimes seeing what's being reflected back at us. Okay. So that's why we're here. Okay. So this isn't necessarily, let me see what I have down here. Everything that they take in sensorily, they take meaning from, okay? So when they hear you say something, they take some kind of meaning from that, whether it's what you actually meant or something they've created in their mind, what they think you meant. Okay, so when you can stop and do some reflective conversations and questioning with them, you can understand what it was that they misunderstood and redirect. Okay, sometimes this isn't an overt process. Okay, it's something that's happening kind of in the background. But that's why we need to reflect, because it brings in some intentionality into what we're doing as parents. And intentionality is a very important word when you're planning for your children, when you're communicating with your children. So we're doing this first because the communicating and the planning that we're doing in the next 2 weeks kind of have this as a foundation. Okay. You get to determine the environment that they're in, that they're learning from. And when you do that intentionally, that has the best outcome. go on to the next thing. Okay, if you will look at these mirrors, what do you notice?
All different shapes.
Mm-hmm,
Different perspectives,
mm-hmm,
distortions.
mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. A lot of us have been in a situation where we've used one mirror to reflect another mirror, especially if you're trying to see the back of your head. You've gone to the barber shop or the hairdresser and you want to make sure they didn't mess it up. You know how that works. Or just in a public bathroom, you get that infinity mirror kind of effect. That's true for our children. The older they get, the more we reflect one another because they've absorbed more and more of you. Or their reflection may have some distortion to it because they're trying to push away from you, right? So our brains make use of something that's called a mirror neuron. We're going to talk more about that next week in the communication section. But essentially, what the voice pattern, the body language, whatever it is that you have going on, they will mirror that and you will mirror them. Okay? So just be mindful of that. A distorted reflection produces erroneous ideas about self. So if there's something in the way of what we're seeing, if we've gotten bent out of shape, literally, concave or convex, then our reflection, what we see, isn't accurate. It's not true. Okay? So if there's something in our relationship that's gone awry, there's a distortion. There's one of these things going on. So it's important to have conversations with them because you will notice it. You will notice when they are off and wonky and just weird, okay? So it's important to have a good relationship with them so that you can talk about what's causing this to happen. Because in their gifted world, existentialism is a real thing. They worry about all the problems of the world, and it might not really be anything to do with you. Maybe they heard about something going on in the world, and they don't understand it, and they've internalized it, and they're just, they can't process anything else because it's taking up so much space in their brain. And so what you're seeing coming back is this crazy thing that's being pulled by all that's going on up there. So being able to have that conversation and say, not in a combative way, but what's going on with you? What's happening in your head today? What's the biggest thought you had today? Are there any thoughts in your mind that you're struggling with? Being able to ask those questions. And you'll come up with your own version of those. Those are not necessarily, patterns that you have to follow. But oftentimes we just say, how was your day?
Yeah.
He's okay.
Shut down.
Mm-hmm. People don't, and my husband is one of these people, he does not know how to answer that question. How was my day depends on how I take my day. What do you mean, how was my day? Like, my day was my attitude. What do you mean?
Play by play.
Right?
First, and I'm like, I'm there for half of that.
Right? So you either get the details of this is how my day went, like this is what happened in my day, or I'm great, I have a good attitude about everything. Or I have or it was a terrible day because I just don't want it to be a good day. Like, you one or the other. So having them really think about the processes that are going on in their mind. What's going on let's think metacognitively, so that overarching thinking about thinking, if you've heard that term before. What is the overall process? Thinking about the mental process, and that's where those math problems are valuable, is not to get the right answer, but to learn how you are thinking. But that's not what a lot of classroom teachers want. They want you to get the right answers. So having the conversations with them about how are you thinking about this? Where is your brain going? What's the next step? Or are you taking steps or are you making giant leaps? Because they can do both. We all have, you've heard of that abstract, random, and concrete, sequential, and all those kind of things. That's a real thing. People kind of fall into one of those 4 quadrants. And so you may be very abstract, very random. You make big leaps in your thinking. You may have a child that's abstract, sequential. They are out in left field, but it's got to be step by step. They're going to be a professor one day. That's where a lot of those abstract, sequential people wind up. It's got to be step by step, but it's got to be theoretical. So when you're looking at one of these mirrors, they are distorted. They're not true. But we have to be intentional in the way we are sharing what we want our children to see, what we want them to understand. Okay? So a true reflection builds understanding and confidence. When they have all of that going on in their head, it tears their confidence because they don't know how to navigate through a lot of it. So when you can help them regain a true reflection, it builds their confidence. They can go forward into situations knowing that I have an ally in my parent, not my best friend, but a support. Somebody I can go to when I'm confused. Somebody that will talk to me about all this weird stuff that happens in my brain. So just think about that. Okay, so it's your turn. I want you to consider a situation that you've recently had with your child, whether it went well or not, okay? Maybe one that didn't go so well is better for the activity, but whatever. Okay. What's your 30-second to 1-minute synopsis of what happened? Like, don't tell me out loud, but think in your mind, what's my 30-second, if I had to say what happened in this conversation, what would I say? What would your child's 30-second to 1-minute synopsis of that same event be? How would they be different? Okay, so this is the workshop, part of the workshop. We're going to look at this situation. What I just asked you to do doesn't take much reflection. It's just kind of a real quick, this is what happened. But we're going to intentionally consider this situation in several different ways. So we're going to reflect on our ability to be a good reflection. There are lots of different thinking models out there and cyclical processes for thinking, but one that I use with my graduate students, and I've used with 6th graders and even 5th graders before, is called the 6 Thinking Hats. Now this was created by Edward de Bono. He worked in business, worked with a lot of CEOs. There are school systems in Europe that use this at all grade levels. So it's useful in a lot of different ways. And the 6 Thinking Hats allow us to, what most of us do, we come into a situation, we see the problem, and we're thinking all of these different ways all at once. And all of the different ways that we're thinking bump into each other. What he came up with is a process called lateral thinking. So we separate out the ways that we think about something so that we're only thinking in one direction. It's not one way, it's one direction. We think in one direction at one time. Because if you're thinking in all 6 or 7 different directions all at once, it's a scramble. So you have to pick a direction and go in it, okay? So, the blue hat is our metacognition hat. This is the one where we're thinking about what we need to be successful. We identify things that we might not have, that we might need to obtain. We're painting the big picture. It's how we gain our focus, like what do I need to be focused in this moment, okay? I'm just gonna go around and tell you, and then I'll tell you what order we'll use them in, okay? Green hat is your creative thinking hat. This is kind of the Willy Wonka hat. This is the what if I could, everything out there.
Dreamer hat.
The dreamer hat, right? If we were studying clouds and we weren't allowed to take a field trip, what if I could have a retractable roof on this ceiling and we could open it up and see the clouds? And what if we could do something wild and crazy that's never going to happen, but that's the hat where everything is okay, right? The black hat, sometimes you'll hear it called a purple hat. This is where it's not negative, okay? I want you to think about that. It's not a negative hat, but it's where you identify risks in a situation.
It's your Venn diagram.
Mm-hmm.
That's your con side.
Mm-hmm. Your pros and cons, the obstacles to what you want, the downsides, any weaknesses so identifying weaknesses is not a negative thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
So-
risks and all of that, that's
Knowing those things is good.
a
So
matter of not being stuck on those things.
right, and that's De Bono says far too many of us wear this hat all the time.
Too long,
Yeah.
And for too long. We don't want to wear this hat for too long because we start navel gazing, everything is wrong, nothing works, so we can't wear that for too long. The yellow hat is the opposite of the black hat,
It's your
in a
con
way.
side.
Yeah. What's the positive, what's the best thing that could happen, what are the benefits if we did this thing? Optimism, but it also requires evidence. Okay, it's not a pie in the sky kind of woohoo, it's what do I know that's good that will lead to an outcome?
Grounded.
It is grounded. And then the white hat, this show is even before my time. My parents would have watched the show where they were, the detective would go out and he'd say, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Right. So this is your detective hat. You're looking for information, for facts, for figures. Dragnet, yeah. No emotion involved, like just the facts. What are the numbers involved? What are the details involved? What do I have in front of me? Okay. And then, of course, the red hat is the emotional hat. And this doesn't mean the angry hat, and it doesn't mean the happy hat. It means all the emotions. Whatever emotion there happens to be, when you're wearing the red hat, you can feel all the feels and all the things. Okay? And not just your feelings. The red hat helps you be aware of other people's feelings.
I really like this model.
Mhm.
I really do. I feel like you said, the different competing kind of thoughts and everything, and we do inadvertently, I think, kind of sometimes land in this black hat area. I don't know, I just really like this model, not only for like myself as a parent, but like to work through it. I can already see like working through these with my daughters.
Yes.
Speaking
It's
through
just
them.
like your intuition can easily hop in and override the evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can try and see something in a way for you to potentially not have a risk.
Yeah.
You know, like how all these different hats, you're trying to wear 3 of them at one time,
Yeah.
and it doesn't give you the clear line of sight that you need for the information that is at hand.
Right.
And it can get very muddled, to say the least,
Yeah.
especially for somebody whose brain runs like,
Really
For
quickly.
sure, and
Yeah.
it
it can all get muddied up
Yeah.
very easily.
But
Yeah.
validates too.
Yes.
Right? Like giving the time and space
Yeah.
to be able to validate each of those areas and the complexity of like
Yes.
the individual. Like, I don't know, I really like this model.
I'm OCD, and my blue hat and my white hat stay on almost all the time.
Yes. Yes.
Almost all the time.
Yes.
Those 2 hats stay in front of me,
Yes.
right, so.
Yep.
Yep.
And then a lot of our gifted children are all green and red. They're Christmas colors all the time. We've got all the what ifs and all the emotion and nothing else. Okay. So, but you've got both sides.
Well, why are they so defensive when you say as you stated before, when you say, why did you do that?
Cause that red hat's on there tight.
Mm-hmm, yeah, that hat band is a little too tight.
It's a skull cap
Yeah.
right now.
Yes, definitely. Oh, my goodness, that's so good, that's so good.
But it's kind of, with me, I have a nephew that's around Dalen's age, and I can talk to him and he can do something, in my reactions are so much different.
Mm-hmm,
But with Dalen, I know you know better.
mm-hmm,
I know you've been
Right.
with me since you were 6
Right.
months, so I know you know better now. Why did you do it?
yeah. And so, but why doesn't allow them to express, they know you're angry.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll tell you from me being a child of that nature, sometimes any attention is better than
No
none.
attention, that's
Okay.
true, that is very true. So, but why also doesn't allow them to use the blue hat?
I do.
Okay, why, when you ask why, they think that you have on
The black cape.
the black hat, or
Oh,
like, or they think you're wearing these two at the same time. Okay, they think you're wearing black and red at the same time, when you ask why. And so, why triggers them to go, she sees only this, I have to provide some this. Or she sees only this, I'm gonna go deeper into another emotion, right? So you have to kind of balance all of that out. But asking them, so here is the process. Now, in reality, in board meetings, in classrooms, in family discussions, you can use any hat at any time.
Order. Yay.
Okay, you can use any hat at any time, it really doesn't necessarily matter. However, this is, if you're really wanting to think through, this is a pretty good sequence. But just know, as long as you start and end with blue, you can mix all this up down here.
The agency.
Okay, yeah. So you see blue twice. You start with blue to go, okay, what do we need for this conversation? Where are we gonna go with this conversation? What do we not have that we need before we start the conversation? Are we all in an uproar? Do we need to calm down first? Do we need a quiet space to talk? Like, what are the things we need? What's this plan for this? That's the first blue hat, okay? And then you're gonna go just with the white hat, and this is really hard for gifted children when their emotions are on, okay? But I thought in this and that, no, what happened? What happened? What are the facts? What could we agree on that happened, okay? So that's where you wanna go. So for the blue, again, blue number one, what do you have to do mentally or emotionally to reflect on the event effectively? White, be objective. If your spouse is here, what are the things that you would, if you both witnessed the thing, the conversation, the event, what would you both agree on that happened? Sometimes that's a good, like, who else is in the room? What do they think? So, what does everybody agree on? Okay. And then yellow, did anything surprise you? Were there things that started in a good way? Were there benefits that we avoided or didn't utilize? Right? Then red are times, different times. So think back to that situation that you thought of for the 30-second thing. Let's look at it a little deeper. Okay? What are the facts of that situation? Maybe write a couple of them down. What were the facts of the situation? What time of day was it? Or was anybody hungry?
That one.
Mhm.
Impacts.
Was anybody sleepy? Did you just leave school? Were you on the way to school? Were you trying to put on a coat and we have some sensory issues? Okay. Were you putting on a sock that was wrinkled? Were you, like, facts can get detailed. what are all the things going on in this situation? How many other people, how many other things were going on at the same time? How many siblings are engaged in this whole thing as well? Where are they in the midst of all this? Okay. And then once you kind of have a couple of your facts down for your situation, move on to the yellow. What were the good things about the situation? It might have been really tense, it might have been awful, but where was an opportunity in it that maybe you didn't explore because the red hat was on and you didn't think about what might have been good? Was there something they said that really could have pulled you in another direction? Or was there something that you could have said that would have pulled them in another direction? So remember, we're thinking through that 30-second to 60-second event a little deeper. So with the yellow hat on, was anything surprising to you? What started in a good way but didn't quite get there? What could you have capitalized on? Okay, so take off the yellow hat, put on the red hat. Where were the emotions? Yours, theirs, anybody else's in the room? Were they worried about someone else's emotions that wasn't even there? But my friend is going to be mad at me, but my friend won't like me anymore, but my teacher is going to be disappointed, but my dog doesn't know that I have to stay after school and he wants to play with me and I'm worried about my dog. I mean, really, what emotion, because one of the overexcitabilities is an emotional overexcitability. And that's where they really think empathetically toward anything and everything. And if they have imaginary friends, those imaginary friends have feelings too, and we have to consider them. Okay? We got to hold the door open for all 45 of them. We have to do like all the things. Okay? No, that's so-and-so is sitting there. You didn't set a place for my friend. Like you didn't, those things happen. Okay. So with the red hat on, were there any times that you, as the adult in the room, felt out of control? Was there a moment you felt really proud of your child? Like maybe they did something really dumb, but dadgummit, they stood up for themselves. Okay. What did you take personally that you shouldn't have? Because remember, they may talk like an adult, but they're not on your level emotionally. So when they say hurtful things, don't absorb it, reflect it. Okay, let it bounce off. Because when you absorb it, they see that and they go, "Ooh,
Found the button.
I can do that again."
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Last night, I don't even know what she got upset about, but I did something wrong. And she tells me, "You are so beneath my expectations."
Oh!
Heartbeat?
And y'all, I just bust out laughing. I was like, go take a bath. I didn't know what to do, but I was like, Tag, you just like scolded me. I was like intense. I had never said that to her ever.
Yeah.
But she like cut me like
Yeah.
that. And I was like, dang.
Dang.
Connor's been getting a little snarky lately.
Well, and they get to an age where they're going to try that out.
Yeah.
And it's just the age that they're at, and they start to hear things in their peers at school, or they're not necessarily their intellectual peers, their age peers, because there's a difference.
That's the worst part.
Mhm.
He's bringing home less than her expectations.
Yeah.
He meets her
He meets my
expectations.
Yes.
He's bringing
Yes.
home crap that's not
Is nowhere near where
on
you,
his level.
you want
And
him to
it's
be.
like,
Yeah.
all right, now
Um,
you're just being dumb.
right, you're choosing to be that
Yes.
way in this instance. Yeah, I've had a similar experience with my daughter, so I know where you're coming from.
I do say some things though. At my daughter's birthday, she was being real impatient about like opening things. Like, okay, patience. Like, mother, I have not developed that skill yet. And I'm like,
Okay. Yeah, you can recognize, yeah.
Well, you just admitted you have a problem, that's the first thing.
That's the first, yes, there you go, there you go.
You just admitted you have.
Have a problem, yes. Okay, so, now that we've thought through the red hat, take the red hat off, pick up the black hat. Where did you notice things going wrong? When did it get risky?
It's the type of look
Mm,
that I can look at Valen,
mm,
and that look just, why are you looking at me like that?
mm-hmm,
And he get very defensive. And I said, do not, do you understand this? Do not look at me that way. And he go, well, I was just looking, no. Do not.
look at me like that. So, in getting ready for today, I read an article, in which the professor, he's a professor of a freshman level course, and he was trying to prepare his class for, it was like history and different things, and they're trying to examine the why behind the history. Why did these things happen in this society, and why did that, and what are your ideas? And he really had this idea that he wanted his classroom to be a safe space where people could share their ideas, where they could have deep conversations. And about, 4 or 5 weeks into the class, this girl, or I don't know, I think he said it was a girl, person in class, says, I just don't feel safe in here. Okay? And so he's floored, like, what? That's my whole goal, is to build a safe space. That's the whole reason we're having these conversations. And so he struggled with it the whole semester, just really trying to figure out and ask different ones, and just never got any better. And so finally he had one student that had done really well in the class, and that at the end, in the evaluation, the course evaluation, he asked this one in particular that he felt like had participated the way he wanted them to, like, what is it that makes your classmates not do what you've done? Well, you have this look, right? You have this look. He's like, what do you mean I have this look? Well, you just think we're all stupid. He was like, I don't think anybody in the classroom is stupid. What do you mean? And she said, you just have this look that makes us all feel like you think we're stupid. And so he said he called all of his friends and said, do I have a look? And to a person, they all said, yes, you have a look. And he went, what? I have a look? And so his friend, his best friend, he said, okay, do I have a look? When do I have the look? How do explain this to me? I don't know this about myself. And he said, you do have a look. And because I know you so well, I understand that you are really concentrating very deeply on what I'm saying, because you don't want to miss any of it. But, there was a but. He's like, oh no, what was the but? He said, if I didn't know you well, I would think you thought I was really stupid. So it's this kind of look on his face where he's questioning, but he didn't realize that look, he didn't realize that what he was thinking created something on his face that communicated a completely different thing, unease. So, yes, exactly.
That's why I always look bad.
I'm always trying to concentrate.
I'm just
So-
thinking.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. And that, for a lot of our gifted kids, is often the case. They have, or you have,
Yeah.
that you have a look they're reacting to that you don't know you have, or you are reacting to a look they have that they don't realize they're doing. And so, you know, sometimes it requires looking at an actual mirror and saying, okay, trying to make your face look like their face and show them, this is what I saw. I saw your, and say specifically, your brow is furrowed. The corners of your mouth have turned down. They can't argue with that, okay? And that lets them know what their face is doing that they may not be aware of. And it's not a combative thing. It's not a, why do you always look so mad at me? It's a, you know, your eyes are downcast. The corners of your mouth are turned down. You have this crease right here, and I don't know what that means. Can you explain to me what's going on in your mind when all of that is happening on your face?
That's a conversation I've had as an educator with kids about when they would have interpersonal conflict with teachers, is explaining like tone and, you know, nonverbals and how it may be communicated to their teacher, and also trying to bridge on the other side, so, yeah, I definitely.
Yeah, so, I mean, sometimes we have to have the weirdest conversations with our children because they just don't quite.
Well, as an instructor with adults, and that's, a training instructor. I look at each person's face and I can tell if that person is grasping what I'm teaching.
Yes.
And the last class I had a young lady, I could look at, when she started frowning, I said, well, let me go back over this. And other people that haven't gotten it, why are you going back over it? Let me run my class. You just,
you just hold on.
You just follow along.
We're gonna get it.
The facial, the non-verbal expression tells you a lot about a person at all times. That's like walking in Walmart. You know, you see people and you may want to speak to them, but they have this defensive look. I omitted a person like that I really knew. I went to school.
Yeah.
And she said, hey, Perlene. I said, hey. And she said, why you didn't speak? I said, well, you look like you were kind of occupied.
You look like you were in your mind somewhere.
And
I didn't want to
when
interrupt.
looks like that, I say, hey. And he looked at me, I'll take a picture.
Yeah.
I said, now tell me what this tell you.
Yeah.
I said, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And he told me, oh, that don't look good. I said, that's what
I
I
see. That's what I see. So what were you thinking in that moment?
Then he
What was
told
going on?
me, he told me, you just wasn't gonna let me go outside and get up. But you can't go on the trampoline and it's raining.
You're gonna slip. You're gonna get hurt.
But it stopped raining, but it's wet.
Yes.
But you don't understand if you start having a cold, and I'm looking at the results. I'm not looking at you out there.
Yeah.
You know?
And we have to have those very transparent conversations sometimes too about, this is my perspective. This is what I have to think about as your parent that you may not even know that I'm thinking about. And just like you tell your daughter, that's my issue to worry about, you don't need to. Sometimes we have to tell them, this is something I'm thinking about that affects you. You may not understand that I've gone down that road in my mind, but I've already considered all of these things. But what you do need to know at all times is how much I love you, how much I care about you, and I have your best interests in mind. So that, just reassuring them sometimes of those things. Okay, so take that black hat off. Put the green hat on. What's another way to end this situation? Is there a way that could benefit everyone? Win, 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 win. Everybody gets something that they need. What's a new solution? Can you see one?
I say just come to a conclusion, tone your voice down. Look at me square in the face, say, I love you anyway. But I have to let you be you, but I have to also, you have to also allow me to be an adult in your life. I am the adult. So I make the adult decision, but when I see you're stepping into my zone, then I have to allow you to get out of it. But I love you. Yeah. You have your authoritative in your room, like with your toys and things of that nature. But when it comes into an adult side, that's a different story. You're 8 years old.
Yeah.
I'm over 50.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay over here, you gonna stay over there.
Yeah.
So.
And sometimes having the conversation
Yeah.
and letting them know what are the things that are my things to think about.
Yeah.
And, you know, we never want to put them in a position where I'm big, you're little, I win, you lose. Okay, that's, that kind of goes wrong. They do need to respect our authority. They do need to respect who we are. But we don't want it to ever go, and I don't think you did, I just for the room. When you set it up as a competition that way, this is mine, you can't have it, you're never gonna be, you know, like sometimes we get that deep in conflict and it gets really, really negative really quickly. And I don't think anybody here necessarily has that, because you all care enough that you are here, right? But I see that. Sylvia Rim has written about why gifted kids make bad grades and different things. One of the things she talks about in some of her books are family dynamics. And there's 4 major ones that are bad, and you may have engagements in and out of those things. One is daddy is an ogre. Daddy's always angry. Daddy's always the one who does all the discipline. Daddy's always the, you know, rah, 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 dad's always like this. And so the child doesn't get to see the father as a positive influence or see them as someone who can give them wisdom. Okay. There's also mommy is the ogre. Mommy ogres are not necessarily loud and gruff. Mommy ogres more so tell dad what he's doing wrong all the time.
Or they're emotionally or mentally,
Absolutely.
manipulative.
Yes, okay, right. So if you have the mommy is an ogre situation, then it also puts the father in a bad light because the mom is belittling the dad at different times, undermining his authority. Don't tell them that. That's not the way to do that in front of the children. Like sometimes you gotta have those parental conversations about how you're going to parent, but they don't need to happen in front of the children.
It goes back to this solidarity on the whole front.
Yes, absolutely. You've got to paint a solid picture where the two of you are on a team. Okay? Even if you're wrong, be wrong together. Okay? You'll figure it out. You'll find a new way. You'll become better together as well. But if you're, you know, that's wear these hats with your spouse. Have those conversations with your spouse if you need to. And sometimes the best thing that we can do is not try to control our spouse.
What? Boo. Just kidding.
I know, I'm they're gonna hate me. No.
You see, all the what you're talking about ties back into like having the home front and everything, and the parental guidance and all of that. It all ties back into the attention thing that I said a minute ago, and also with the underachieving.
Yeah.
The underachieving is part of the handhold and getting attention. I will underachieve if I'm gonna get an attention for not doing the work anyway, because I don't need to do the work anyway.
Yeah, if I get more
So-
attention from my parent.
What's it matter? I'm
Yeah.
still gonna do so, and that's one big part of the loop that does come hand in hand with behavioral issues and communication, lines of communication with authoritarian people and things, whether it be teachers, parents.
Whomever. Yeah. It can get very.
I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Well,
It can get very deep. And the other two, so that's daddy is an ogre. Mommy is the mouse of the house. Mommy never says what mommy wants. Mommy always defers to daddy. Even if daddy is not an ogre, if mommy is always, I don't know, whatever. Does your little girl want to grow up to be you if that's the way you're behaving? Does your son learn the type of woman he wants to grow up and marry if that's the way you're behaving? Okay. You know?
men marry their mothers.
Yes.
Hey, not to get you off track,
Yeah.
but back to the solutions, one of the things that I feel like my best self likes to do
Yeah.
is to do the repeat back. You know,
Yes.
here's what you've said,
Yes.
here's what I've heard,
Yes.
before I give my perspective.
Yeah.
Because maybe I heard something when he was saying it, and
Yeah.
I like to, that's a really good point that you
Yes.
said, and I missed that.
Yeah.
Here's what I saw, so
Yeah.
maybe next time,
Yeah.
leading into the application differentiation,
Yes.
maybe next time we could do it like this,
Yes.
you know? So
That's
more
really good.
team oriented, and I can appreciate the differentiation between parent, you
Yeah.
know, and the kid,
Yeah.
but more of a team oriented.
Yeah.
You taught me something in that,
Yeah.
here's what I saw,
Yeah.
maybe you could look at it like this next
Yeah.
time.
That's really good.
That is,
Really
thank you,
good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because I never even thought I will say things like that, but really taking it under consideration.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, his dad be overseas, so he only come home. And he see his dad do what I say and, you know, respect me as his mom. So, well, why my daddy do what you say? I'm his mother. But to ask him that, I never went into that situation. So thank you, that did
good.
open something
Yeah.
for me, and I appreciate that.
Reflect back.
Yeah,
This
just
is
doing
what I
the
heard you
right
say.
thing. Yeah.
This is what I heard you say. And that's part of
Yeah,
communication,
that's-
good communication.
Is there a daddy mouse? Is that the last one?
No, it's, Daddy's over, Mommy's mountain house.
No, it's,
Mommy isn't
he went
over.
to get milk and never came back.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
He went to get milk.
Daddy's absent, is kind of,
Absent father.
Is that it?
it's not, it's got a different name, but that's
That's
essentially what
absent,
it is.
okay.
I'll
Absent
I'll
parent.
make sure I have that
Absent
next week.
parent.
Yeah, just not available, not available at all.
Emotionally.
Emotionally or physically or
Or
in
both.
some type of way.
No.
Yeah.
He calls every day, he go through homework with us, he fussing. Say, do your people need you or what? Mama, I got to help my child. Cause like when we got ready to enroll him,
Mm-hmm.
and my niece, texted and say, Dayla's gonna go to this gifted program. We need X amount of dollars. Okay, I'm cash apping you right now, let's go. I said, we can't, and I told you, I said, we have the money,
Yeah,
but we just can't, you told
Yeah.
me, you said, hold on. He's very active, and I thank God for him being
Yeah.
that way. And with him being gone,
yeah,
you know, even he's gonna call every day.
Yeah.
And Daylan, hey, what was going on in school, or why did you do this, and
Yeah.
or what happened, or things of that nature, and he listens to him, so he'll talk to him.
that's good.
Well, let me get the phone and let me go in my room. Oh, you don't want me to hear, you know? And then
Yeah, he wants that private moment with his dad, that's okay. Okay, so like you were doing, you were on the crew, the green hats, we
Yeah.
got the green hat, coming up with those good solutions like better communication skills, better listening skills, not having conversations when we're tired, when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we're in a rush, those kind of things, like making sure that we plan things intentionally. And, you know, the best laid plans of mice and men go wrong. We know that. But if we are so engaged in our schedule and in our things that we don't consider what that means for them and how they need to prepare, then we set them up to fail. So sometimes it's a matter of, in the morning, saying, today we have these things to do. And after school, that means these things need to happen in this order. And that way they're prepared for it when it happens, instead of, Mom just picked me up from car rider, and instead of going home, we're going to the dentist. Wait, I didn't know that was about to happen. I'm scared of the dentist, I'm freaking out. Mom didn't tell me because she was afraid I would think about it all day, but now I'm really freaking out because it's a surprise. But you have to know your child and know what triggers them in that way. So just a lot of the preparatory things, that setting the agenda for the day, or setting the tone, the giving the 10-minute reminder or the 5-minute reminder, hey, in 10 minutes, we're leaving. In 5 minutes, you need to brush your teeth.
It sets object permanence.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So just those good reminders for them. And then finally, we put take the green hat off, put the blue hat back on. Okay? And this is where you think about what you just did. Did this process that I went through show me anything about me? Did I learn anything about the way I've been handling situations with my child? Did I learn anything about whether I'm rushing into things, whether I need to plan differently, whether, you know, whatever it is? Think back through what we just did right now and look at what are the points that stood out to you? What are the points that made more sense to you? What are the points that didn't make sense? And make a decision, how will I handle the situation next time when it comes up? Am I going to reflect back to them and say these things? Am I going to choose a better term? Am I going to make the choice to not be offended? Because again, they are children, they are not your peer. So when they say those cutting things, like, I told the people that are important to me. You know, those are the things that can really cut at your heart.
Yes.
But you have to choose, okay, you know what? That says more about where you are than what you really think about me. You're testing this water, right? To see if I'm still gonna be here or not. If I'm the permanent object or not. Okay? So we have to choose to not be offended. But what else for you? What is it that you came across in this process that maybe you didn't expect to come across?
This application of reflections, I was wrong. I was wrong.
Okay. So reflecting on your reflection. Now is when we really get that infinity mirror out.
Even though those are the same pictures,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the first one, not the first one, to the tree, but
Yeah.
it seems like they got closer.
Mm-hmm.
You see how, so,
The gap between them.
yes,
It's a
the gap.
yeah.
The gap came inward.
Yeah.
That it appears that they was coming to a conclusion.
Yeah.
But a peaceful conclusion.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, not just for the kids, for anyone, but I try to make sure that Dalen is peaceful within himself.
Yes.
You are great. We had our conflict,
But it's
but
over.
it's over.
They
Let
have-
it go.
They have to be comfortable with the outcome.
Yes.
Yes.
More so than you do.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because we can keep dealing with our own, like you said,
Yeah.
we're not emotional or mental peers at this moment.
Yeah.
We have more time to work on ourselves.
And have more
Right.
bandwidth
So
to do
that
it.
they have the better stuff coming out of it,
Right.
the reflection.
Right.
I was
Absolutely.
telling her, I've learned more from our 9-year-old in the last 2
Yeah.
years
Wow.
than I have in a lot of other situations in life. And it's every day, reflect. Every day, you'll learn something new. You can learn something new from anybody.
Yeah.
They're there for a reason.
Okay. So just kind of as you think through those questions, keep that in mind. Okay, so the final question we're going to talk about is how do you advocate for your child using the skill of reflection? Okay. So again, they need you to not be their best friend. They need you to provide support, wisdom, assurance, and mentoring. So as you reflect on things, as you go through that process or a similar process, whichever one you like, whichever one fits your personality or your situation best, this is just one that we've been through today. How can you use that when you have conversations with other adults? How can you use what you've learned about your child with their teacher? My child responds well to, like the comments that were made a minute ago. Like if you repeat back to him, my child responds well to taking 5 minutes or knowing that there's 5 minutes left. My child responds well to.
Flip-flop.
Right? And then what does your child need that they can't provide for themselves? What do they need that they cannot provide for themselves? What is it that they're going to continuously get into situations with because they just don't have that maturity yet to handle? But you know, hey, when they get in the situation, this is the thing that calms them down. This is the thing that brings them back to reality. Okay. And then, just how can you navigate that situation when they can't? Especially if it's with teachers, with the school, with bus driver, cafeteria lady, whatever. If it's another adult involved, there's no other adult in your child's life that advocates harder than you will, or that knows them as well as you do. And so when they're having problems with another adult, maybe that adult has never seen something like this before. Maybe that adult doesn't have the emotional maturity yet, right? Because we don't often. We run across people all the time that don't. And so,
How you gonna let a 9-year-old get under your skin like that?
right.
It happens.
It happens all the time, and I have looked at more teachers and said, what other profession are you about to enter? Because this is clearly not where you belong. I can't say that out loud.
You can.
I could, but it wouldn't necessarily fit the reason I'm there. Yeah, it's like very evident. I am an open book. Really? No, but, no, I could say a lot of things, and then we could all say a lot of things. But
Now,
part
I
of
had one
that
professor-
wisdom is knowing when to say.
Yeah.
I had one professor when I was in grad school, and they were doing the emergency for teaching. He told them, he said, I know a lot of you guys are here to get the emergency
License.
license. He said, you will have 36 children. You're gonna have 36 backgrounds.
Mhm.
You're gonna have 36
Mhm.
attitudes.
Mhm.
And if you're not in there for the child,
That's right.
You don't belong
and
there.
if you don't, this was got me, if you don't educate yourself on 30 different levels, you're gonna have some child miss out on the education,
Mhm.
on trusting you.
Mhm.
Think before you come in this class to say that you're gonna be a teacher, because teachers wear so many hats.
Yes, they do.
So think about it, because you can damage somebody's child. And that's what you don't want to do for a child to go home and say, I don't wanna go back.
Right.
And right here at USM, he
Mhm.
made that statement.
Yep.
Should be made every.
It should be made.
I think so.
And that's one of the things that I tell my students that take. I teach the SPED class that they have to take. So everything in my class they get gifted, and they get a lot of gifted because we talk about twice exceptional with every other thing there is. So if we're covering autism, we talk about autism and gifted. If we talk about ADHD, we talk about ADHD and gifted. If we're talking about cerebral palsy, we talk about cerebral palsy and gifted. So if they've had me, they get it, but I'm the only one here in the gifted arena. So, I didn't have gifted in that class when I took that class. But one thing I do tell them, I tell all of them, is while you are in my class, I want you to begin thinking like the teacher. And I want you to think about your behavior in my class as if it was a student in your class. Are you behaving in my class the way you would accept a student behaving in your class? And if the answer is no, then you better get your act together. Because I don't want to put up with plagiarism. I don't want to put up with, oh, but we just. You're here to learn to be the adult in charge of children, and if you're behaving more like those children, what are you doing here? And I will tell that to every one of them. And it's up to them to rise to the occasion or not. But my quizzes are not based on definitions. My quizzes are, you are in a classroom. This is happening. What do you do? It's based on whatever theory we've been studying. But that's what my tests are like. They have to find and advocate for the best option and explain it in a lot of cases. So I want them to be prepared. I want them to get into that classroom with their children in their heart, in their mind, and to be prepared for what they're going to have in front of them. So, but not everybody that teaches teachers how to teaches that way. How many times can you say teach in one sentence? Anyway, so that is all I have for us today. I hope that you have found something interesting, or at least, if it's not anything new, at least you've said, oh, I already do that and good for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
reinforcers.
Just reinforce the good things. But next week, we will be talking more deeply about communication skills and strategies and things like that. So I hope you will come back if you can. If you can't, join us on Zoom. If you can't do that, I will try to get you the information you need some other way. But thank you all very much for coming. I'm grateful to have this many people in the room and people online. It has been a really different season for us this year. We are growing by leaps and bounds. I know those of you that may have come to one of these a couple of years ago, there might have been 3 or 4 people in the room. And to see this many of you here and know how many are online, that's amazing. And I think the more we talk together, the more we get to know each other, you get to know one another, the better things can be for our children. The more we can advocate, the more we can have those conversations.